Matthew.
Thanks a lot. Matthew Lee, Inner City Press. On behalf of the Free UN Coalition for Access, thanks a lot for the briefing and for the proposal. I wanted to ask one thing that's timely and then something else. Just this morning in front of the Security Council, the permanent representative of the UK, Matthew Rycroft, said on Burundi that the UK is concerned of threats of genocide. So I wanted to know, obviously it's a small country with the number. One, if you have any reaction to that as people that work in this field, but two, how would you, and I think I understand it, but how under this proposal would the type of crimes which would trigger this restraint be defined? Would one country saying there's a threat of genocide be enough? Would it require a vote? And also, I was in an event about Western Sahara recently where the foreign minister of the Polisario or the SADC said that he believes that France wields an implicit veto on, for example, the issue of human rights monitors for MINURSO in Western Sahara. So I'm wondering, how would you get at this issue on Israel-Palestine? The U.S. hasn't vetoed in a while, but the possibility of its veto seems to loom large over the discussions. How would your proposal get at these kind of more implicit vetoes? And would the situation like the war in Gaza, is this an atrocity for which resolutions couldn't be vetoed? Thanks.
Well, it's not one question. Clearly. This is not an initiative on the veto. This is an initiative on action in the Security Council on atrocity crimes. So it cannot be on the veto because 104 states are treated at the same level here. And we want to, as I said, we want to help create a culture in the Security Council that makes people, be more active in these situations. And yes, part of the commitment is to not vote against proposals that are made to that effect. And yes, for 2 of the 104 supporters, that means not casting veto. But it's not a proposal on the veto on the Burundi question. Obviously, you should ask the UK representative that question, not me. We have seen, of course, the reports that have come from the ground, and we have seen the statement from the Office of the High Commissioner. And these we are, I think, all of us taking very seriously. But I have no view on that. But you have really asked implicitly a question on the code of conduct that I'm very happy to answer, namely, who makes a determination of what is the crime involved? And the answer to that is we think the state themselves have to make that determination. And they have to do that in light of the information that is available to them. And in all these situations, there is ample information available, as in the ones that you have mentioned. The code of conduct also does encourage the SG and the UN system as a whole to make such information available to states, but it is not a requirement of the application of the code that anyone says this is genocide or this is a crime against humanity. We have very deliberately, in fact, avoided that.
Just on that point, I mean, on Burundi, yeah, I think the seeds of genocide are implicit in the Burundi situation and have been for a long time, but seeds don't always grow. And I think it's the responsibility of the United Nations and the Security Council to make sure that the Arusha Peace Accords are upheld and to try and shift the situation in Burundi in a more positive direction. In terms of how do you determine this, as I think Ambassador Venevassa has alluded to, we have structures. We have a joint office for the prevention of genocide and the responsibility to protect. We have a Human Rights Council, which is very good at early warning. I can't think of a situation in the world today where there are mass atrocities where we didn't have early warning. We have plenty of early warning. What we don't have is timely response in each of these situations. And I think that's where the code of conduct is really, really important. Credible action to prevent and to protect. And so I think it's precisely applicable in these sorts of situations where we see things heading in a very dangerous direction. There's a responsibility to try. There's a responsibility to do better than we have done in the past. And I think that's what this is really about. It's a political commitment. And I think it's one that should be celebrated and supported. On the issue of I guess my previous answer alluded to something that you're asking about, Matthew, which is the role of the silent veto. We know there's a silent veto, which is used behind doors to weaken, dilute, and undermine attempts to confront human rights abuses in the world. I think, you know, that the issue of the veto and the role of the permanent members is different from the broader issue that ACT is trying to get at here. But maybe if we had more people supporting positive attempts to enforce a responsibility to try, then we wouldn't be in such a mess that we are today with 60 million displaced around the world.